let's face it, you need to have a lot of money to afford any of the cars on this list, especially number 1, so stay tuned for that. And to just abandon them like that? It's pretty much just throwing away money. Anyways, let's see how rich people waste money as we take a look at 10 abandoned millionaires' cars. With all that said and done, let's begin, shall we? Number 10. 450,000 Rolls Royce Phantom. This isn't just your ordinary Rolls Royce Phantom. As it turns out, it's a special edition equipped with a Centurion body kit. Now, what it's doing abandoned on the side of railway tracks in suburban Russia like some abandoned kid's toy is anybody's guess. But this is such an expensive waste. A $450,000 waste to be exact. According to some stories, the car was originally owned by some hotshot celebrity in Las Vegas before it was sold on to a rich Russian. Though how and why it got to its current location, covered by snow and flanked by chopped firewood, is still quite the mystery. Anyway, a Rolls-Royce doesn't deserve this kind of embarrassment. The company could have spared it from such fate and rebought it again just to keep the Rolls-Royce status optimum. Number 9. 490,000 Lamborghini MIURA. Simply the name itself triggers a sad feeling. An abandoned Lamborghini sounds like a joke, but this is more than serious. Apparently, this Lamborghini belonged to a very famous superstar who was called Greek Elvis, and it was presented to him as a gift. Well, Aristotle Onassis, who was one of the richest men in the world, was deeply fascinated by the pop star's work, and he awarded him with his Lamborghini. Surely a gift such as this doesn't deserve to be preserved in this way, though. So, this car was driven time and again, and when the mileage got to around 52,118 miles, it had some mechanical problems. The engine had some issues, and the best alternative that Greek Elvis took was to leave it in the parking lot of a hotel. 3 decades passed without anyone noticing the Lamborghini MIURA rotting in the parking lot, and after it was moved to another storage facility, the Lamborghini got lucky since it was about to be put out of its misery. In 2012, 30 years from when it was abandoned, the Lamborghini MIURA was placed for bidding in an auctioning event. Luckily, it was sold at a pretty good price. Number 8. 500,000 Jaguar XJ220. There's something extremely depressing about finding an abandoned car out on the streets collecting dirt and dust with no hope of a car wash or even a wipe down with a damn cloth in its foreseeable future. What makes this more depressing is that the car you're looking at is one of the rarest ones you'll find on the planet, the Jaguar XJ220. Only 275 of these supercars were ever made, making it one of the rarest cars in the world. Born out of a dream that came to then Jaguar chief designer Jim Randall, the XJ220 became one of Jaguar's most unexpectedly successful models in its proud and rich history. Such high esteem held for the XJ220 should be enough for an owner to take the utmost care of it. If the car's designer could have seen it in this abandoned, dirty, wrecked, and sad state, maybe he could have opened a case on the owner of the car. A nice piece of work such as this car should be taken in and treated with respect. However, the opposite of what's expected befell this Jaguar. Number 7. 1.045 million 1967 Shelby Cobra 427. Sometimes, for whatever reason, people abandon cars others can only dream of owning in the first place. That was the case with this 1967 Shelby Cobra 427, left to become nothing more than housing for nearby mice after the only mechanic the owner trusted to work on it died. It has been abandoned since 1991. Have you ever had that one mechanic get adjusted just so much that you'd rather have a broken car than have a stranger mechanic fix it? Well, it seems that the owner of this car had the same feeling, so he decided to let his car stay broken and abandoned for decades. There are so many mechanics in this world, and maybe, just maybe, he could have found one who could have fixed this car properly. Well, this car was lucky to be found in this condition because it could have been worse than this. The house in which this Shelby Cobra was abandoned was about to be taken down so that a new house could be constructed. If it weren't for the concern of the neighbors, this car could have been scrap metal in a junkyard by now. Number 6. $1.1 million Ferrari ENZO. The ENZO Ferrari is one of the rarest and most desirable hypercars in recent memory. Named after the legendary Italian sports car maker's founder, only 400 were built, although the car sold originally for around 600,000 when it debuted in 2002. The final ENZO ever built, owned by Pope John Paul II, sold at auction for $6 million, while a rebuilt wrecked one sold for $1.75 million in 2016. This is why it was truly extraordinary when pictures of a dusty ENZO abandoned in a Dubai police impound lot turned up on the internet in 2012. Even more extraordinary is that the ENZO remains unclaimed to this day. The car was impounded by police after it was abandoned by its British owner in a parking lot in 2011. Although law enforcement in Dubai usually sells such vehicles after a period of time in detention, this car, which is valued at $1.1 million, is not for sale. As it turns out, Interpol believes that the ENZO was either stolen or purchased with stolen funds. Number 5. 1.5 million Bugatti VEYRON. This hypercar, which is reportedly worth $1.5 million, has clearly seen better days. It seems like the owner of this Bugatti gave it a ceremonial burial and covered it with some ash after it was involved in an accident. Because of the accident, the owner thought it would be better to leave it out there than repair it. So, what's left in this Bugatti in the wrecked state? Okay, so this Bugatti was involved in an accident with a car, which is just as sporty as itself. It was hit by an Aston Martin. A minor scratch on the rear side was enough to end the speedy and classy road life of this Bugatti. It would have been more comforting even to clean it regularly than to let it sit there covered in the dust and looking like a car-shaped island. Abandoning a Bugatti is like literally taking $1.5 million and lighting it up so that it can turn into ashes. Number 4. $2 million Koenigsegg Trevita. The owner of this car must be given some credit because unlike the earlier cars in this list, he left his car in a parking garage rather than leaving it out there in the monstrous weather to endure the harshest of conditions. Still, the car was abandoned, the secure place notwithstanding. What makes this abandonment sadder is the fact that there are only 3 Koenigsegg Trevitas in the world, and one of them is sitting in a parking lot without an owner to flaunt it. Even the company which is renting the space out for the parking is more than shocked. The owner accumulated a total of $1,000 in parking fees before anyone even realized that the car hasn't moved in over 2 months. Surprisingly, the owner of this car has a thing for breaking up with cars without lasting that long. It didn't even take a while before the owner bought another super fancy car, a McLaren P1 this time, and abandoned that as well. Number 3. $2.5 million 1966 Ferrari 275 GTB. Remember the abandoned Shelby Cobra we talked about earlier? When it was found, it wasn't actually alone. Another car belonging to the same owner was also found alongside it, and this one is definitely more expensive. The car in question is a 1966 Ferrari 275 GTB, which is worth around $2.5 million. Tom Cotter, a classic car expert who tracks forgotten machinery for a living, found the mice and cricket-infested Ferrari as well as the Shelby Cobra alongside 2 other classic vehicles, a V8-powered Morgan and a Triumph TR6 with just 9,000 miles on the clock. All the cars have just been sitting there gathering dust since 1991, when, like I mentioned earlier, the mechanic servicing on them died. Clearly the owner would rather see the cars rot than be ripped off by some other mechanic that he doesn't trust. Now it's time for today's best pick. In today's pick, we find out the fate of a supercar that once belonged to the collection of the son of probably the most evil guy in history next to Hitler. This was rumored to be lost in a massive fire, but was found to be intact years later. Find out more next with number 2. Uday Hussein's Ferrari F40. Uday Hussein, eldest son of former Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein, sure did love cars. He reportedly had dozens of rare and exotic supercars, which included a Lamborghini LM002 and this car on our list, a Ferrari F40. Rumor has it that Saddam had ordered the entire car collection to be on fire to punish his son for shooting several people at a party in 1991. However, it seems that the F40 survived that blaze. The lost supercar was found in Erbil in Iraqi Kurdistan, in the possession of a man who was obviously well off due to the armed guards that always surrounded him in his house. The man, who remains anonymous, declined to say how he got possession of the car, but was able to confirm that it formerly belonged to Uday when he sent it to Turkey to be serviced. Finding the car took a lot of effort from a few people, particularly Ferrari enthusiast Rosa, who tried to purchase the car. The current owner asked $1.15 million for the car, which was a little too rich for Rosa, so despite his efforts into finding it, he had to pass. Before we move on, do me a favor. My analytics show that only about 15% of you watching are actually subscribed. Come on guys, what's up with that? Can you guys please hit the subscribe button? You guys watch my videos every day anyway, so you might as well subscribe and keep up to date with every video we put out. Number 1. $4.5 million Bugatti Type 57S. When eccentric Dr. Harold Carr died at the age of 89, his relatives faced a daunting task to sort through his possessions. His home was packed with piles of medical machinery, 1,500 beer steins, thousands of receipts, and even a World War II spy drone. But all the effort became worth it when they opened the door of his garage and struck gold. Inside, they found a 1937 Bugatti Type 57S Atlante. The historic automobile, with only 26,284 miles on the clock, still has 99% of its original parts. It is highly coveted by collectors, as only 17 were ever made, and at least 4 of those are thought to belong to the Musée National de l'Automobile in Mulhouse, France. Others remain in the hands of private collectors. The car was originally owned by racing enthusiast Earl Howe, who was the first president of the British Racing Drivers Club. He took delivery of the sporty 2-seater after it was completed in 1937 and kept it for 8 years. After Earl Howe sold it, it changed hands a couple of times before Dr. Carr bought the car in 1955 from Lord Ridley, a member of the Northumberland gentry. He drove the car for the first few years, but in the early 1960s it was parked in his garage where it remained for nearly 50 years until his death. Would you intentionally abandon an expensive car? Let us know down in the comments below. Also check out the channel's other equally amazing videos. As always, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time. Later, everybody.